to bring research back to NCGR to put us into alignment with our um, uh, our chart and our mission and our name, which stands for National Council for Geocosmic Research. So, and I just thought I'd give you a really quick background. Um, I was speaking to Demetra George at NORWAC last year, and she mentioned that she wanted to bring back, or she suggested that we revise the SIGs, the special interest groups. And so I mentioned it to Lee Weston, who was in charge, and she said that the SIGs were the rules for setting them up were stringent and that they were outdated. And she suggested we add research to the name. And it was like I remember the moment I read that email because it's like something sparked in me. And I thought, wow, this is exactly, what I was looking for. So that was the spark that the zero Aries needed to get this whole ball rolling. So anyway, I'm so excited to have this coming to a culmination today. And I was sharing with the group that today Neptune is exactly on my sun to the minute. So again, it's an astrology magical thing that we all know astrology works. And that's what's so exciting about this research program that we're going to be proving how research works so that other people, mainstream, will start to accept it and to recognize what a wonderful gift we have. So, so as this program, the ideas popped in, then you know that things are meant to be when synchronicities start to happen. And so, just ideas and I set an intention for the exact right people to be involved. And Deb Osveld and Emily Waldron jumped in and help to ground the project because I don't have any earth in my chart. So they've just been so helpful. And and the rest of the people that you're going to meet today all came in through either they popped into my mind oftentimes in the shower. I call my transmission booth. Um, but also they just happened to cross my path. And this has all been kind of organic. It took on a life of its own. So I'm really excited about who you're going to be meeting, especially the person I'm going to introduce now. Um, Taylor Jackson is our new search leader, and I'm just thrilled to have her on board. So Taylor, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Linda. Hi, everyone. As Linda mentioned, my name is Taylor Jackson. I am brand spanking new to the NCGR board. Uh, my ascendant happens to be within minutes of NCGR's ascendant, so it seems destined that I would be involved in some capacity. But I am so excited to be here. I've been a practicing astrologer for a few years. I've also, like a few people you'll meet on this panel, have a background in engineering and science. And so this mission to continue to validate astrology and prove how effective it is, as we all know that, but it just making sure that we advance the field and drive it forward and have it continue to evolve is something I'm so excited to be a part of. Um, yes, I look forward to moderating this panel, getting to know more of you. Also, I'm currently based in the Hudson Valley, New York, moving to Denver in just a couple of weeks. So anybody Colorado bound will be gearing up that NCGR Denver chapter with some great events and things. So definitely reach out. Um, but yes, I can pass it back to, actually, so what I will go into next is basically today we will have a wonderful flow. We've got 6 panelists that will give us some general presentations about research. We'll be asking them some fantastic questions about their extensive history with astrological research. And then from there, we'll be introducing all of our SIRG leaders. So as Linda mentioned, these are our special interest research groups, and we've got a wide variety of topics, all kicking off on a rolling basis. We'll have more information for you on the website. And so we're so excited to share this information with you and hopefully get you to join NCGR and get involved with the SIRGs. They are a great time. All right. So to kick us off, we're going to introduce the panelists. The first panelist we'll have excuse me, we'll have the list of panelists we'll have Didem John, Judith Hill, Franco Minitel, Alfie Lavoie, Manda Selva, and Wendy Stacy will be speaking with us today. And so to kick off with the beginning of the panel, we'll start with Didem. And we'd love to ask you, as we'll be asking all of our panelists, please introduce yourself and let us know why you accepted the invitation to join this panel. Didem, I see you there. Okay, while we wait for let's see, is there a mute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there
Can
you
you
are.
hear me? Okay. So, my name is Didem Can, and I'm Istanbul, Turkey. I'm from Istanbul, Turkey. I accepted this invitation because I believe astrology can be approached not only as an interpretive framework, but also as a field open to observation and database research. And in my own studies, I'm trying to figure out possible correlations between astrological indicators and social events using statistical analysis. Okay. Oh, now you can see me, right? Okay.
Yes, now we can. Thank you.
Okay, you can see me. Okay. And I see this panel as a valuable opportunity to share experiences and exchange perspectives and discuss how much these kind of studies can be developed further. That's why I accepted this invitation.
Awesome. Thank you so much to them. We're so happy to
Thank
have you join
you.
us, especially all the way to Istanbul. I was just
Uh,
letting you all know we have a very,
Thanks as
very
well.
international crowd today. We've got people from all over the world joining us to talk about research.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we have Judith Hill. Judith, will you join us and introduce yourself and let us know why you accepted the invitation to join the panel?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, I wanted to give a real credit where credit's due to Linda Kubota Bird for getting this going. I've been waiting for this for 30, 40 years. And so my name's Judith Hill. I'm the founder and president of the Academy for Astrological Medicine. And in 1987, I think it was, I was the educational director of the San Francisco NCGR. And at that time, I spent about 10 years working very hard on three major statistical projects in astrogenetics and astroseismology, and also for vocations with replications, with papers published around the world, and presenting at all kinds of conferences which weren't astrological. And we received a grant from the Institute for the Study of Consciousness in Berkeley. But there seemed very little interest, and it was very exhausting and expensive, and I had to get on with my life. So, many years went by, but in those years, I have spent a lot of time designing projects that are not statistical, that are more direct, that I feel would prove astrology very dramatically in the office setting, provided the people taking the tests know what they're doing. You don't have people test race cars who don't know how to drive race cars. And so, if you're going to test a certain subject, you have to have some practitioners who are experienced in that subject and really know what they're looking at. And these are also tests that can become statistical. But I find that astrology can be proved. I've spent a long time figuring out methods, pioneering methods that seem to get around a lot of the problems encountered in research, that seem to produce very good results initially. I'm always cautious. I tend to get excited, but I've been through all the scientific process, and I know, you think you've got something, and then all of a sudden you don't, and it just keeps happening. So, replication, I know, it's important. But I'm very interested in doing some research that would be physical. And I have some, I believe, even with a blood pressure cuff, we can prove that astrology has very direct physical results. And this has been proven before. There's been researchers who have done this, and you get some very immediate results. So that is what I'm interested in. And I hope there's some other interest out there. We have so many wonderful ideas going on here. So I'll be thrilled to see this.
Thank you so much, Judith, for sharing that. That is incredibly fascinating. I frequently use the blood pressure cuff at my gym, so just connecting that somehow to astrology just is blowing my mind right now. I'm so thrilled. But, all right, so the next panelists that we have to introduce themselves, we have Franco Minatel.
Hello. Thanks, Taylor, fellow mech. I'm Franco Minatel. I've been studying astrology since about 2000, and being a mechanical engineer, totally rooted in science. When my older sister, got into astrology, I just thought it was a pile of BS, and reading your daily horoscope in the newspaper and stuff, and it's like I was gonna, win a lottery or whatever. And so when I went through a divorce, and my sister says, "You're seeing my astrologer," and so I reluctantly went. She goes, "I'm paying for it, don't worry." Okay, whatever. And then when the astrologer was telling me, "Well, you've got this trait and this trait," and I'm going, "Why are you saying that? Because it's true, but why are you saying that?" "Well, it's because you've got Mars in this house, and you've got this, and then your sun is square this, and all that." So what that did was, like, it made me start questioning it, and then I really got my interest piqued. And so you start doing it, and you start attending classes, and then I met this guy who is exactly a Saturn return older than me, Alfie Lavoie, who you'll be talking to next. And he says, "You're an engineer too? Oh, great. We've got a research group." I go, "Oh, cool." And so that's when I started getting into astrological research. And again, the type of research we do, I understand there's qualitative and historical research, and those are all valid. But being an engineer, it's the numbers that play to me, and it called me. And so looking at statistics and learning how to work with the charts and the numbers that you get, and working with Alfie's fast research program, which reduces writing down and jotting all these things and looking at charts individually, where you can do it in like 5 minutes, and then you can start playing with the real numbers, and then deducing, does this premise work or does this premise not work? And that's kind of the cool part, because you could say, "Oh, I think there's going to be, this is a trait that makes a doctor," or this is how you're going to get an illness or something like that. And you look at it and you think you're going to be right, but then once the numbers play out, you go, "Oh, okay, well, that wasn't valid at all." So now we can roll that out. And so it's really weighing out all the pluses and the minuses to come up with a ultimate solution. So.
Thank you so much, Franco, for sharing more on that engineering quantitative aspect to it. I know we heard Judith also mention making sure things are replicable, making sure things are validated. These are just fantastic things to keep in mind that we are prioritizing here in rigorous astrological research. One note for all of the attendees. So this presentation today, this webinar, is mostly presentation format. We don't think we'll have too many opportunities for Q&A, but in case we do, if you do have a question, please drop it into the chat with Q ahead of your comment so that we know to look out for it. In the event that we are able to get to questions, we will prioritize those with the Q typed in front of them. All right, so now we move to our next panelist, Alfie Lavoie. And Alfie, we would love to hear again why you were interested in accepting the invitation to join this panel, and a brief self-introduction.
Okay, my name is Alfie Lavoie, and of course my degree out of college was experimental engineering. So as an experimental engineer, all I did is research upon research, and I work in nuclear a lot and doing research. And when I got into astrology, I think my mind was to test it out. And a lot of stuff that I read and did in astrology didn't make any sense. So my first research that I did was a market, because somebody from the New York Stock Exchange was paying me to do research using astrology. And of course, I wrote the alpha trading system. And it's used all over the world to predict the market. And it works very well using astrology. So in 2002, I started the group that Franco was talking about. And we had researchers all over the world. And we were meeting every Tuesday night and doing research. And we done tremendous amount of research. And I forgot the woman that collected all the data and sent it to Alio Strendel into Astro Data Bank. She sent me a registered letter and sent it to Alios too, that anything that I want that's saved on that site, he has to give it to me. So I have data upon data upon data on doing research. And so I feel that then I wrote the piece of software that we're going to share with the NCGR. It may be over a lot of people's head, but I think Franco will do a class on it and you'll be able to use it. There's nothing in the sky that you can't bring and do research. You can even do what I call the sandbox. And the sandbox is all the 1,000, 2,000 asteroid with names like Carol. And so you can even do that, put it and do all kinds of research. So I think that the fact that one thing that I always wanted to prove is does astrology work? And I was telling you before about Epstein. When Epstein, they said he hung himself. Well, I had over 500 people that committed suicide, and we run it through our research program. And what our research program is, it does chi-square, and you can't do a research without control group. And later, if I got time, I'll show you an example, or I'm going to talk about an example of people that I sat on the workshop, and right away, as an engineer, says, this doesn't make sense. But they were well-educated astrology or well-known astrology. But with Epstein, we ran the thing to all kinds of tests, and it does chi-square. And how many of those has the chi-square, and how many aspect of planets in the house, so whatever you put in. And it creates a model giving weight to all of this. And then you can send any chart or group or chart, and it tells you how well that the person front with that. And and I did something with Epstein, all the people with that committed suicide all had 100% fitting the graph. Epstein had about 1%, means he didn't commit suicide, and we know that. All right. And then around that time, Robert Williams committed suicide. I said, oh, God, I can check that. So I ran Robert Williams in there, and he was full. He did commit suicide. So there's so many things like the breast cancer. I did a lot of breast cancer for women. The only thing is I got crapped on because astrology used to tell me, well, you can't tell a woman that she could have breast cancer, scared the hell out of her. And I said, well, if she has a thing that maybe she could have breast cancer. She can have a check every year and it's good. So I dropped the subject. And I have about like 1,500 women that had breast cancer. And I send people like my sister, who is 90 years old now. She says no breast cancer for her. Should never have breast cancer. So you can run a woman's chart in this data, and it tells you what's the probability of her having breast cancer.
Alfie, that is incredibly fascinating and very phenomenal to know that we can get that kind of information from
Well,
astrology.
I
And I
tell
know
you,
that, yes,
if research is done with the control group, most people said, "Oh God, this is what's going on in the chart." But what we do is what the program does. It generates a control group, and if the control group have the same thing, it's not important.
right.
It's only
Thank you so much.
important
Yes,
what the research data is. So
absolutely.
I think that a lot of people are not an engineer and they're not technical. And you can't blame them. They do a lot of work and research, but a lot of times they're not doing it right.
Exactly. No, thank you so much, Alfie. There's so much information, as we mentioned here. We've got validation, replication, control groups, things that really come into play as we're doing, validating
And the
and
software that we
delegating
did
astrological
that
research.
we're going to share with the NCGR, I'll send you the thing and people can download it and use it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alfie. We do have to pivot to our next panelist, but we know you've got a
Okay.
wealth of information and
Yep.
some more time to speak later. But thank you, as always, thank you so much for the magnificent information that you're sharing. I'd love to pivot to our next panelist. So we have Amanda Selva is going to be sharing some more with their introduction and reasons why they accepted joining the panel. Thank you so much, Alfie.
Thanks, Taylor. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you great.
So I'm Amanda Selva. I'm NCGR's research director. I'm also part of the publication team. So I help them with the NCGR Research Journal. I've been involved with the NCGR since a long time. So I got my certification in 2007. As part of getting my level 4 certification, I chose to do a small study with natal charts of lottery winners. This was my first experience with astrological research, and since then, I've not been able to stop it. And this has led me to this whole fascination with midpoints, Iranian, and vibrational astrology. It's a fascinating time for astrological research right now. Evidence-based astrology is growing in leaps and bounds, and there's a rapidly growing interest, and it's very palpable. So I'm just glad to be here.
Thank you so much, Banda. That is fantastic. And I know we'll hear more about SIRG and NCGR's research journal.
Yes.
I've been getting clued into midpoints through some friends who do Uranian astrology. So I can't wait to hear more about that information.
Okay.
All right. Our next panelist is Wendy Stacy.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you, Linda, for setting this up. This is amazing. Like Judith, I feel like I've been waiting for this for decades as well. I've been researching astrology for decades myself. Just to introduce myself, I am Wendy Stacy. I live in just outside of London in the UK. I'm president of the Astrological Association here in the UK. I also run the Mayo School of Astrology, and I'm a tutor for researching contemporary cosmologies for the MA at the University of Wales. And I started researching really as an astrologer late 80s, and just through wanting to confirm birth times when clients would come at a 6 p.m., 7 p.m. birth, I would just like to do a double check. I was very young and just wanted to sort of experiment with am I working with the right birth time? And it became very apparent to me that the birth experience was very evident, of course, trying to locate the ascendant and things like that. And that sort of spearheaded me into a lifelong research project, and it will continue to grow over the next course of my life. But I'm also interested in lots of other different research as well, quantitative and qualitative. So I'm really open. I think this is really, really exciting, and it's so wonderful. There's 140 people on here interested in astrological research. So well done, Linda, and the team at NCGR. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Yes, we are in great company. So many of us interested in astrological research. It's so exciting. All right, so we're going to pivot to the next part of the panel with our individual questions for our researchers. And so routing back to Didem, Didem, we know that you've done some very, very thorough astrological research. Can you share some more about your experience with this? All right, Didem, if you're able to unmute. We've got your video. There you go. Okay.
Okay, sorry. Okay, my first research was on autism, and it's also published in NCGR. My experience has been both challenging and inspiring. The most difficult part is obtaining the accurate data, especially regarding time and sometimes location. But I might to say it's also a valuable learning process. Having a child with autism is a sensitive issue for parents. That's why some families didn't want to give the information of their child, and few of them was open to share. That's why I had to get help from Autism Foundation and some private teachers. Once the data is ready and we get the result, seeing meaningful astrological pattern emerge is deeply rewarding and gives us a deeper understanding of how astrological indicators might related to the events or how astrology works. Since the individual with autism often experience difficulties in communication, I expected to find a significant traces related to Mercury. I thought Mercury will be all over the data. Even it's not the way that I thought it would be. Mercury was noticeable in the data due to its interaction with angles and midpoints. For example, Saturn aspected midheaven Mercury midpoint, and Saturn Mars midpoint aspected to ascendant, and Saturn Neptune to MC, and Saturn Neptune to Mars, and Saturn midheaven midpoint aspected to Jupiter, something like that. Difficulties, restrictions, delays, and struggles will be required when it comes to Saturn. When we think about symptoms of autism, it's quite understandable that Saturn is prominent in the data. The finding, this kind of finding literally opened a window in my mind. I realized that in addition to the keywords on astrological symbolism, I could now add new combinations to my knowledge. This was a big realization for me. And I must admit that I had quite hard time doing my first research. I didn't really know how to start or where to start or what exactly I should be looking for. When I attended Alfila Voice classes, I met Franco, who explained to me which finding in the data were likely stand out. Because we need to look at everything, planets, houses, ruler of houses, sometimes asteroids, and even TNPs with the planets, so everything. When we think that we can spot the key findings, it's still not enough. It's still not enough because we are looking at everything, so we have lots of key findings in our plates. At that point, Manda came into my life. My teacher and my mentor, Meira Epstein, introduced me to Manda. And Manda helped me understand how to frame my work properly. And from then on, I knew what steps I should be follow. First, forming the sample group. Once we decide the topic, we should gather the charts. If it's possible, the time information of the chart should be precise. Second, explore the data. It's necessary to play with data and recognize each titles separately. I mean, what is the most aspected planet? What is most observed midpoint structure? Something like that. And third, defining the key points for each item. Then we have to decide which findings to proceed with. Even we think we've identified an astro signature for our sample group, it's essential to test it with different control groups. Earlier, Alfie mentioned it. Sometimes we get significant results, sometimes we don't. And if we don't get the significant results, I think it's still valuable because it helps us to redefine our search criteria or sample group. For example, I'm working on earthquake right now. I have two different sample group, one 1,600 based on over 6 magnitude, and the second control group is almost 500 and based on death numbers and over 7 magnitude. I worked really hard on them, and finally, when I discussed my findings with Manda, her opinion and ideas helped me to clear my way and change my perspective. What I want to emphasize here is how important collaboration and exchange ideas are doing research. For example, Ariel inspired me to do work on Venus. Once we were talking, she told me that, why don't you work on Venus phases? And I gave a thought, yes, why not? And there is a very famous saying that morning star Venus is a warrior planet. Is it really so? So I worked on that, and morning star Venus and evening star Venus were almost equal. There is no significant difference between them. So combining astrological data with scientific methods is complex, both methodologically and statistically. It's not easy to balance astrology's interpretive nature with objective criteria of scientific analysis. Here, maintaining impartiality in data interpretation and avoid bias are among the most demanding part doing research. The mind must open to all kind of outcomes. And I believe that this type of research or studies neither proves nor disproves, nor redefine the indicators we have learned or come to know. However, it raises questions, further questions, and deepens our understanding. And each finding leads another questions, like a continuous thread. And actually, we are trying to make sense of findings. And this kind of effort is like an adventure from one mind to another. I think this is this is what I want to emphasize here. It's kind of an adventure. It's ongoing process, and I love doing research.
Oh, I love that phrase that it's an adventure. That is
It's an adventure. Yeah, I think
such a
so.
wonderful way to look at astrological research. Oh my gosh, thank you so much, Didem.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is just so much even richer than I'd expected. And I know my mind's going to be blown with this entire panel. Fantastic. Thank you so much for that journey. Next to share, we have Judith Hill. And Judith, our question for you is, how can tests be designed to rule out psychological considerations that may be cited by skeptics to dismiss potentially positive results in astrological research?
When I first posed that question, it was for people to think about. I didn't realize I was going to be answering it. But I will do my very best. So when you design a study, you want to avoid in your topic using like two major things, either using words that are infinitely extendable with symbols, such as you want to do a study of women who think they're feminine, and you want to see if Venus is on the ankles. I'm just making this up right now. But you don't define what feminine means. So, this actually happened with the Myers-Briggs massacre of astrologers. And so, the one woman thinks being feminine is slinking around in leotards. Another woman thinks it's being down at the gym. Another woman thinks being in the kitchen cooking with a bunch of children around her is feminine. So everybody thinks something different. So if you're going to use terms that have wide psychological interpretation, depending on individuals, you're already getting into danger water with the skeptics. You need to define the term very precisely, such as women who feel that being feminine is being Xena the warrior. And, and still you're going to need to define that further. Secondly, to allow people to define themselves is a big mistake. You'll have some person you meet and they will think they're one way. I'm so friendly, and they're actually not. And, it's just what they think about themselves. So you need, if you're getting into these kind of studies, you're getting into psychological interpretations, which will always come under attack. The other way it works is by especially with vocational studies, which I just love doing, I was able to solve this problem, which is using terms that are too broad. For instance, the Gauquelins were famous for insisting that sun signs never worked on their vocational studies. Now, that's not true. They work great. And they found, because they would do all musicians, all athletes, and of course they're going to, so I decided to do one of my big studies, was a very broad-based athletic study. And I took all of the baseball players in Who's Who and all of the football players in Who's Who, and and all of the jazz players that were ever listed in the jazz book of Who's Who, all jazz players in history, and I could get just their birth dates. This is a sun sign study. And I divided them by jazz instrument, and I divided football and baseball players by their position, like baseball coaches, football coaches. I would put two things together. Then I did a study I went into Who's Who. I would take two things, nurses and administrators. I took nursing and administrators. Every single one of these would get about a 60% in one sign. 60% of the nursing administrators in Who's Who were Virgo. And it would always fit. 60% of the great jazz band leaders were Leo. I had statistical significance for bass players under Virgo. All jazz players, now if you take jazz, you get music, then you get it by genre. So jazz, the statistical significance for Aquarius and Gemini being jazz musicians. And then when I would divide it by instrument, the only instrument Virgo comes up for is significantly was bass playing, and they're the background support instrument. And the Leos, it would fit. It was amazing. So, same thing we had just across the board. You would get, these were, of course, not huge samples, but in both baseball and football, we had statistical significance for Aquarius as coaches. And this was interesting. And so the same thing happened everywhere I went. So you get the genre, you then tidy it down. So if you're going to do athletes, you can't just do athletes and then declare astrology does not work, which is what kept happening. Like, example, a gymnast is a very different creature than an ice dancer. Or no, actually they're similar. A long distance swimmer or speed skater or a wrestler, a boxer. A boxer is a very different creature than an ice dancer. And we did a study of this. Boxers like to punch people, and they're working in partnership. Ice dancers are working in partnership in a cooperative, harmonious way, just the opposite. And you get different body types, you get different faces. Gymnasts tend to have, a little pretty face and a little more oval, and the speed skaters always have these big jaws. This is actually true. You can just watch this. So you have to be, so the more precise you get, and the more you get it down to a field, then a subfield, then do two things. You will start getting sun sign significance, and it will fit. And it's even so dramatic that I've had a number of Libras tell me they just don't like jazz. They like harmony. So, and one Libra said, but I do love the French horn. So I thought, well, I'm going to look up there were only two great French horn players in all of jazz at that time. This was 30 years ago. And they both were also composers. So there's two things. They're musicians, they're composers, and they're French horn specialists. They were both Libra. And otherwise, Libra did not score very high in jazz at all. And so the more precise and nuanced you get before you start your sun sign study, you will get positive results most of the time.
Wow. Thank you, Judith. That is in-depth and phenomenal, especially with so much work. So much of our work requires so much on the exact birth time. So to know that there is that sun sign statistical significance is just a huge win, especially knowing how many demographics and people over history just don't have that exact birth time, and people in older generations. So that is just tremendously helpful to hear. Thank you so much for sharing this.
Thank you, Taylor.
All right, next on our panel, we're kicking it back to Alfie Lavoie. And Alfie, we know that you've had a very long history in astrological research. How have you seen it evolve over the years? And is there a future that you see for astrological research that you can share with us?
Well, my feeling is of course, I'm talking like an engineer here. I mean, there's a lot of research, but to me, you have to do it correctly. And of course, you can't check 25 people. You need at least 300 of your bank in order to do research, and 300 chart at least. Of course, the more you have, the better off you are. And then you gotta. I know the chi-square. A lot of people say chi-square, but that's very, very important to find out how strong is this chart into anything. And if you have to do astrological research, you've got to check everything. And like I said, I think the software that we're using is check just about everything. And you can even check house ruler. And I was always curious about house ruler. If you have, like me, I have Sagittarius on the seventh house. Does Jupiter partnership and marriage and all that? And I checked that out, and it works quite well. One thing I always wanted to do a research on, and I never did it, never able to put it together because I'm really busy for what I do here every day. 12 hours a day, it's normal for me. And one thing is that there's a lot of people that won't use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in their chart. And I see that in horary. And in horary, like I said, I was doing horror in 1962 when people didn't even know what horary was at that time, because horary only came in popular in the 80s. Let me see here. Yeah. Uh, uh, when Lily was finally, and all the Lily people, they don't use Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. Well, I used to do at least 3 to 4 horary chart a day for people all over the world. All right. Like Rob Hen always tells me, and Steve Forrest, you want a horary, call Alfie. He's the best. And I found out if I don't use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, then, many times I wouldn't give the people the right answers. So that's one thing I'd love to use, like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, especially now that we know that house ruler works, So, in other words, if you have Aquarius on the seventh house cusp, when you got married, is it Saturn that was strong in your chart, or is it Uranus? That would be something that could prove uh, many things. All right. And so my feeling is, I remember what really in 202, what really started me into research, although I've done research in astrology, from the time that I got into it and full time in 1965, when I got into it full time. I opened up my school, the Astrological Institute of Research. By the way, I got arrested 2 weeks after I put my sign up. They picked me up, they threw me in jail. And because there's a blue law in Connecticut, you can't do astrology, tarot, psychology, and psychic. Otherwise, you could spend 10 years in jail and $10,000 fine. So I had a client and a good friend that was the national Democratic chairman in the United States, and he was also a lawyer. So I called him up. He said, "We'll change the law." So we went down just before Christmas when they were ready to break up for Christmas vacation. He said, "One thing we got to cover." And we brought the thing out. They took astrology out and psychology, but they wouldn't take psychic and tarot. That's still in the blue law. And my feeling is this: how come that if astrology, psychology was against, why is this so popular today? Where do we go? Where do we go with astrology? Because it's not popular at all. You go up on the street, you say, astrology, and people laugh at you. And I know when I told my VP of engineering I'm quitting astrology, I'm quitting, I'm going to astrology full time. He said to me, "Do you have a lot of money?" I said, "No." He said, "If you want to see a psychiatrist, we'll pay for it." So that's how we felt about astrology. I mean, so my feeling is we can do so much with the thing. And one of the lectures that I'm supposed to do at UAC next year is how to handle new moon and eclipses, and I learned all that into doing research using accident, death by accident, death, marriage, and many things, and find out how strong was those things there when you got married. Check it out. Check your chart when the day before you got married, the month before you got married, the new moon is either in the seventh house or hitting the ruler of the seventh house. And one thing that I'm in the process of running an article right now is that the president of the United States, they all died when there was an eclipse or a new moon hitting the moon in Pisces, and it rules the eighth house. So, and you can predict every death of the United States because of that of president.
Alfie, so it sounds like you have a lot of exciting things coming up between UAC and
Yeah.
with some of the interesting research that you're doing on modern planets and comparing them with classical.
I want to
Yeah,
cover something real quick here.
okay, sure.
I was sitting in a workshop years ago, and we brought this speaker into Connecticut, and a well-known speaker. We all know who this speaker is, and he did a research on killers. You know, I mean, all killers, and he went through all kinds of chart and stuff like that, and then he finally said, killers, I found that killers has a fixed sun square a fixed Pluto. And to me, that doesn't make any sense because from 1962, 1948 to 1960, Pluto was in Leo. So 4 times a year, you had people squaring that. And on the way home, I had to take the highway. And I'm saying, should I stop by and go or keep going? Because my honey Carol has a Scorpio sun and Pluto and Leo real tight. I'm saying I'm married to a killer. But
Alfie, that's so funny. Thank you for sharing that story with us.
When I did the research, when I gathered,
Alfie, we are running a bit over time now. We want to make sure everyone on the panel gets their chance to share.
I want to cover one thing. One thing is that if you use control group, the control group will all have that. So that won't be important at all. That's why you got to use control group in order to do research. Otherwise, you're wasting your time.
Thank you so much for that reminder about control groups. I know that's something that's come up in a number of different presentations from panelists today. And also thank you for those stories. I'm glad to hear, knowing that I'm in the Pluto and Scorpio generation, I'm glad to hear that, a quarter of us aren't going to be killers at some point. So just excited to look more and validating that research for sure. All right, so next we are hearing from someone on Alfie's team, actually, Franco Minatel. And Franco, the question we have for you is, why do you think that quantitative research is useful in astrology? And especially, why use statistics when they're so subject to manipulation?
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, statistics can be manipulated. You find I don't know, pharmaceutical companies taking data and working them to their liking so that they can feed you a drug. If we're going to be serious about our research and analytical, we don't take that into account because, in fact, what we'll be doing is if we manipulate our statistics, we're going to be falsifying our results and making us look more ridiculous to the skeptics. Now, statistics, why are they important? I get that a lot of astrologers, from that I've met, a lot of them went through kind of like psych degrees. They have psych degrees or literary art degrees, and there aren't that many in the more scientific field. So when you're in the scientific field, yeah, you start working with statistics and you start understanding them. Without statistics, we will not be able to build the car you drive in. We use a statistical analysis to tolerance the dimensions of the vehicle, and that allows us to have a vehicle that won't shake and rattle and fall apart. So, do astrologers use them? Yes, even if you say, oh, I don't believe in statistics, the minute that you start looking at it and, I'm looking at, Pluto and Libra or Pluto and Leo for actors, whatever, and, you find 5 actors that have the sun in Leo, right? And you go, oh, okay, so here's my study. So what you've done is you've looked at these and you've determined through your experience that there's a trend, and then you draw a conclusion and you present the 3 charts in your lecture that you're giving at the UAC or wherever. That's a problem with when you don't understand statistics. Like Alfie mentioned earlier, control groups. A control group is an important way to look at how much one group has of one thing versus how much another group has of the same element. So you got to check it. So actors versus non-actors. The other thing is when sometimes you'll see astrologers will take account of, Mercury in house, and then they'll count 1, 2, 3, first, second, third, all the way through the 12th house. And then, you see that the 9th house has 9 and the 12th house has 8. And you draw the conclusion that, the 9th house has more. And so this is a significant factor. When in fact, they're really close to each other and making the result irrelevant. The other thing to keep in mind is charts are holistic. Okay, so charts, we have to look at the whole chart. So not does one aspect or one characteristic make a trend, make a murderer, make a breast cancer victim or whatever, right? So you've got to keep that in mind. Alfie mentioned chi-square, and I mentioned that in my talk as well. I went in a whole bit in my NCGR Florida talk. So what is a chi-squared? So chi-squared is an important number that we have to look at if you are doing research. The chi-squared tells us this is how many we observe, this is how many we expect to see. So like if you're sitting there looking at cars driving by and you expect to see, let's say 10 black cars, black's a popular color, white's a popular color, and you expect to see 10 an hour going by, and you see 10 black cars, white cars, or gray, that's the other popular color. You see those going by, okay, there's nothing strange. But if you see 10 red cars, like how many red cars do you normally see? You might see one pass by every 2 hours, right? But now all of a sudden you see 10 red cars, then that is an important characteristic. Or the fact that if you're waiting to see the 10 gray cars and you don't see any, then that's also an important characteristic. So when we're doing a study, it's important to see what works and what you expect to see and what you don't expect to see. And then when you're looking at a chart holistically, you take all of these and add these all up. So this is how Alfie's software works, where you take all the characteristics, you run it through the model, and then you can plug in new charts and it'll tell you yay or nay. So Epstein kill himself? No. Or did Robin Williams kill himself? Yes. So that's how the model works. Now, the other thing I also want to say, am I good for time?
Yes, one more minute.
Okay. So again, keep in mind, if you're looking at things and making comparisons and looking at the characteristics, keep in mind you also have to look at the other group that doesn't have that. So like Alfie said, if they both have the same, then it negates your findings. Now, does Mars square the sun make a murderer? Well, that depends on that chart. So not everyone will have that. Not all murderers have that, but maybe in this case, this murderer had that because maybe they had a Pluto in the 8th house and a Saturn in the 12th house and whatever combinations. But when you're looking at a single characteristic, keep in mind that 4 out of 5 dentists recommend Trident.
I always wonder about that where they find the dentist, which dentist they survey. So we're talking about statistical significance in samples. We'll see political polls, and my validation is always, well, I don't remember them asking me, so there's got to be some sample group happening here. But oh my gosh, thank you so much. Especially that is hilarious. Now I want to choose from Trident, so I didn't know this time. But thank you so much for sharing that and the use of statistics, and especially, again, having statistically significant patterns, trends, looking at the chart holistically and making sure that, again, things are, as opposed to being an observation of 2 or 3 or a handful of charts, that things truly are statistically significant. That is such a great takeaway for everyone in this group interested in astrological research. Awesome. All right. So next on our panel, we are hearing from Manda Selva. And Manda, as she mentioned, is the director of the NCGR Research Journal, the SIRG. So Manda, we'd love to know what do you look for when you're selecting an article for SIRG, and what makes things stand out to you?
Thanks, Taylor, again. So I'm going to try not to make this boring, and also, Franco's done a great job of talking about statistics, and Judith has mentioned certain things. So I'm just going to make this really brief. What do we look for in an article, right? So the basic thing we're looking for is a systematic study, basically a methodical and structured way of studying astrology. So this kind of evidence-based study has a lot of hope for astrology, like, all the other panelists have mentioned this. And not just for astrology, but for astrologers, for us to be taken seriously. So the articles can be qualitative or quantitative, and one of our other panelists is going to talk more about it, so I won't get into that. But some of the things we look for in an article, right? So most important thing is the research design. Okay, so what kind of sample size do you have here? I know it's kind of hard to get a lot of data, clean data. We understand that. But at the same time, if someone comes with this great article, but they just have this 10 data or very few data, then it won't be a fit for the research journal. But then we can always refer you to the other regular Geocosmic journal that comes out every 6 months, right? So this is something people come up with some really nice articles, but sometimes it's not a fit for the research part of it. So the next thing we look for is a design, like have you put some thought into this, right? And it's also going to be based on what you're going to study. Judith already mentioned is not to make it too subjective, because it's hard to study something that's subjective. So where and how are you going to get your data from? What astrological factors or the variables are you checking for? What methods are you going to be using to analyze the data? And also try to include reasons why you made these decisions, because that gives an idea, that gives us why you did make those decisions. My advice when you first start looking at a data set is whether it's a natal or mundane or events, try, even if you see a pattern, don't stop exploring right away. Try to keep this open. Make friends with the data. Look at different interpretive tools like aspects, midpoints, declinations, transits, progressions, eclipses, tons of them, because I learned my lesson when I did my research. Like I said, I did my NCGR certification. I did a study for the level 4 certification, and I was very focused. I thought if I look at the charts of lottery winners, I'm going to see an aspect that's going to stand out. But that wasn't true. So I started collaborating with people who kind of guided me, and then I saw some progress. That's another thing with the research is talk to other people, talk to other people about your design, see how you can make it better. And also, interestingly, recently there have been a lot of studies on the techniques itself, right? And also using certain techniques like predictive tools in astrology. So, for example, Winsong Godbout, he published a study in 2021 in the Correlation Journal to use or not use midpoints in automated chart matching. So he basically tried to do automatic chart matching with profiles, and he found that using midpoints gives much better results. So now a lot of research is not just based on just based on astrological factors, but also there's research on the techniques themselves. Also, one more person that I want to mention is Paul Western. He's another researcher who's used progressions as his main predictive technique in many of the studies, and he's gotten very good results. So he published one of them in the NCGR Spring 2022 issue on authoritarian leadership. So he looked at like 540 charts of leaders and dictators, and he found there's a greater chance of people becoming leaders within a time frame of certain aspects, progression aspects, which is kind of very interesting. So it's not just transits, just based on progressions. Also, there's something called this extreme sampling technique, which was extreme sampling techniques were used in science. But then Santino Mancuso, he actually adapted this to vibration astrology. And Linda Berry also has worked on it. So that's another technique that's available now. Another reason to keep things open, it's not just one factor that creates a situation. We are finding that there are many of them that work together. So this combination is kind of what we call as an astrological signature. So let's say you have several charts showing a specific health condition. You might notice certain indicators showing up, okay? And someone else might find a different variables. So you put them all together, and this is the kind of where we are going in astrology, to find these different signatures for different situations. And also, astrological prediction is going away from this deterministic method, right? We're not saying, okay, it's a yes or a no, it's black and white. We are going more towards predictive methods using probability. So, what's likely, not what's guaranteed. So, my advice again is to just keep it open and try to use as many techniques as possible, variables as possible, because you can get a better picture of your data set. And something else I think that's kind of what we look for is literature review and background search. I think if astrology has to be really valid and taken seriously, we need to build on previous research. It doesn't have to be the same thing that you're studying, but even if it's related, I think it's a good idea to mention that. And also, it's a form of collaboration. And hopefully, somebody else will mention your work. So, for example, Alfie also mentioned that some astrologers have gone through a hard time doing work. So, for example, if you work on midpoints, you would want to mention Alfred Bittet. So they basically, it was the whole Uranian astrology was based on the teachings of Alfred Bittet. They had this Hamburg School of Astrology, and there was other scientists there. But during the Nazi time, most of their work was burned. So what we have is the remaining whatever is left. So what I'm saying is some of these astrologers before have gone through a lot of work, a lot of challenges to do what they did. So I think it's very important for us to be able to, refer to their books or their articles or, and also the same thing with citations. As much as possible, try to provide citations for claims in the article. And it's for the same reason. It creates more validity for your article. And I don't know, do we have any more time or?
We're just about at time, so I was wondering if you had any last tips to wrap up or leave us
Okay.
with the strong points.
So what is the process, right? We have a publication department. So if you're interested in publishing, I would say the first thing to do is email us and we'll send you the guidelines. It has an outline for what we're looking for in the article. It doesn't have to be exact, but it gives you information, on the formatting and etc. Also, what we look for in an article, first thing when you send it to the research journal, we look at the research aspect of it. Is it a good fit? Does it qualify as a systemic study? Is it going to be valuable for the readers? So once we got that part down, we sign a contract, right? And then we work with you. Again, the key thing here is to be open to feedback and discussion, because the article that you send is going to evolve through this process of collaboration. And once this is done, it goes into the layout design person, and then we have like a publication department. The editors there look at it, they give their feedback. And again, it has to go through some revision. And finally, there's a product. I got to say that most people enjoy the process, the whole process that working with us, because it's learning for us, for all of us. Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you so much, Manda. I really appreciated the points you made. Number one, about collaboration, which I think is one of the entire reasons that these SIRGs exist, is to get teams together, for people to be able to work together, and also for acknowledging that, we stand on the shoulders of giants in our field in astrology, that people have, as you mentioned, been persecuted, been ridiculed, been pushed away for, studying and working in this field. And so it is very important to read their work, to credit them, and to, further this wealth of knowledge that we can all have together in this lineage that gets passed down. Thank you so much for that reminder.
Thanks.
All right, our final panelist here is Wendy Stacy. And so Wendy, the question that we have for you is, I know even as Amanda mentioned, this perfect segue of going from quantitative to qualitative research, but we'd love to hear about the value of qualitative research and when you would choose to use a qualitative approach as opposed to a quantitative one.
Thanks, Taylor. Well, I tend to use them together, so I quite like mixed methods. I'm not a sophisticated statistician by any means, but I do like counting. So I always find that quantitative will always give you the what and the when. It always tells you how many, when this happens. I mean, Franco talked about dentistry. I'd love to do research on how many people get their wisdom teeth out at 21, things like that. I mean, there's so many things we can learn, and like Manda said, to contribute to our body of knowledge. I'm not too concerned about proving astrology works. We could end up in the minority report if that sort of situation. I'm interested in contributing to that body. In terms of quantitative and qualitative, what qualitative does, it brings the story, it brings in the how this happened, it brings in the why this happened, it brings a much fuller sense of how these things happen. I come from a sociological background, so I'm interested in social change. And as much as we can look at data analysis, which gives us so much information, and we need it, we desperately need it, but I like sort of, there's a lot of gaps for me that need filled in. For example, my own research, I did a quantitative study on 90,000 births from 4 hospitals here in the UK between 1990 and 2008, looking at how babies were born, and I had variables such as mother's age, medication, intervention, that sort of thing. And so what, of course, the quantitative data gave me was how many babies are now being born Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That is the outcome of that quantitative research. It's much deeper than that, of course, but that's a bit of a summary of it. However, when I was looking at this research, and this is sort of like it's an ongoing study, when I was looking at this, it didn't give me enough information. And of course, the average age of, for example, the average age of firstborn by a mother was 24.9 years of age. So this data, so when baby's time of birth changed, when we started moving towards a medicalization system, it was in that 1990, which we can sort of understand. A lot of conveyor belt sort of stuff was going on there. We had Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Capricorn. And so we can understand how things became more sort of confined to that clockwork with mothers in hospital. And so what ended up happening, of course, now the average age of mother is around 29 to 30 years of age. But what happened at that 1990, I was interested in why that average age of mother changed as well. And of course, if you take away 24.9 years from 1990, you get smack bang 1965 to 1966, which is a Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Virgo. So because when you read the literature at the time, all the existing literature that would tell you that this is about control, it's about male-dominated maternity wards, it's about this and that. I mean, it ended up being there was many variables as to why women's age changed. About 32 I identified, and they all have really interesting sociological context. But what I did is I did the quantitative data analysis of 90,000, and then I went out and I interviewed women who had given birth by cesarean section. And I interviewed about 35 women, and I was fascinated, and I learned so much by these interviews, particularly the narrative of these women and words, things like when I asked them, how was your hospital experience? And they were like, I wanted the room to be clean and tidy. I wanted to know everyone was doing their job. I wanted everything to be organized. And then I started thinking, okay, this is a generation that wanted to know what sex the baby was going to be. It wasn't about control. It was about organization. It was Virgo. It was like everyone wanted, this was a real Virgo thing, and the amount of parents that contributed to this new trend. So it wasn't just health professionals. It was actually a generation that did that. So I'm fascinated to know what it is, what social change it is, what generations, Pluto and Libra, Pluto and Scorpio. I'm really interested to know how that came to be, how these social phenomena and correlate with astrological trends, but looking deeper by going into the qualitative. So I want to know the experience. So I'm interested in both. I think they're both really valuable, each of them on their own, but I think even better together. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing that. That does add so much rich color and detail. And as you mentioned, just even hearing people describe their experiences, the Virgo just screaming out of that tidy organization. It just so further enhances the quantitative study that you were able to do. And also like 90, that is so many charts. That is just
It was great. Yeah, and I've got more now, so I'm still working on that as we, yeah.
so cool.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, all you wonderful panelists. This is just fantastic. And I know we could all talk to each of you for hours, I am sure. One of the reasons why it'd be great to join NCGR and join a SIRG. But so next, I'm going to pop it back over to NCGR President Linda Cubato-Byrd, who's going to speak more about some things that are coming up and segue us into the SIRG leader introductions.
Thank you so much. Wow. This is so fascinating to hear all the different takes on how the research is done and to help you all see, all of you new to research, the shoulders we get to stand on and the wisdom that we get to learn from and to grow from. And so I really want to honor and thank every panelist for the work you've been doing. And I also want to let you all know that this is just the beginning, that Wendy will be doing a presentation on how to do quantitative and qualitative research. She teaches at the university level so that we will get good guidance as to how to make credible, professional research so that we can raise the credibility of astrology. And Franco will be doing something he'll be giving case studies. There's one about the 27 Club that's absolutely fascinating. Um, Alfie already mentioned the statistics with the Epstein death. There's so many things that we can be studying and learning from, and Franco will be showing us how to use Alfie software. Alfie software, by the way, he's generously donating the use of it for these SIRG projects. So, and I think that's one gigantic um, gift that we have to be able to produce quantitative research that can be credible and not disparaged. So anyway, and in addition to that, we're setting this whole search program up we're setting up a research resource library. So we'll have information available on how to do good research, including ethics in research. And also we have many of the people on the panel have agreed to be part of our research advisory board so that you search leaders who haven't had strong backgrounds in research, you'll have very strong support as to how to coordinate and run your research groups so that you have it's set up to produce something that Amanda will accept for the journal. So we're just very excited and feeling very blessed. And it feels like we're on the cusp of astrology becoming, at least this is my wish, that people will start to value astrology because we all know what a wonderful gift it is to have to help people through their lives. So anyway, that's I just wanted to let you know that we can't cover everything today, but we do have a lot lined up. And some of you may have ideas. Like I'd love to just hear Elfie talk about all the things that he's experienced and done. Just be an afternoon with Elfie. So anyhow, there's just a lot of things that we're in the process of developing. This is all organic. The whole process has been organic, and so it continues to be. Um, and I do want to move into in preparation for this launch, we ran 2 beta testing groups, and it was really fun to see how they operated in totally different ways, and yet still were very, very effective. So I think I'm going to ask Lori Kaufman and Amy Angelo, who were our pioneers for who run the asteroid surge. So I don't know if Amy and Lori are here. Did I
Hi,
hear
thank
Amy
you
wasn't
for
going to
the
be?
introduction. Can everyone hear me? I'm
Yeah.
here too.
Yes, we can hear.
Awesome. So we were really lucky because we were in contact with Demetra George, and she, who inspired this like resurgence project, really wanted to have like the next generation of asteroid research to come forward. And so Lori and I have taken that flame. And we are really interested. We've both learned asteroids from Demetra. There's so many different asteroids. And so, like, our goal of where we kind of grounded in our first, how many meetings have we done? Like 6 meetings, Lori, would you say?
I think it's more than that because I actually just found a note that we started this time last year.
Okay, so like we've definitely almost been going for a year. So that's
Yeah.
amazing. And so we really are interested in the application of asteroid interpretation and mythologies and getting the community really kind of like interested in what asteroids can tell us. And there are some members of our group who are doing active research, who are presenting, others who are brand new. So we come from like a really wide range. And we've just had a really amazing time furthering the conversations of asteroids and how they can be um, revelatory. And so I would say that that is kind of like the inspiration. Lori, would you add anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really fun to watch everything kind of shift and change and see everybody's different perspectives on how they use asteroids and how they work. I've been writing an asteroid encyclopedia for the past 5 years and really doing a deep dive into all of the different pantheons and trying to include every character I can possibly find with a mythic presence. And so it's been really fun to kind of see some of these characters show up in other people's stories and other people's experiences. And especially after like editing a certain character to hear somebody tell a story, I think it's really special. Or to like see how each individual person relates so profoundly to a story, whether it's that they are basically acting out that story in their regular life, or if it's just like the name came up multiple times for them, or it's one of their symbols is really prominent for them. It's just, it feels so nuanced and different to every person. And so it's been really cool to have such a diverse group to talk this stuff through with.
You guys have been doing an awesome job. I get to drop in every so often, and I just want to say that I'm brand new to asteroids in a sense, and even then I learn a lot, and it's so exciting with the research piece in it because there are so many synchronicities that just happen to show up in these discussions. So I invite anybody who's at least even slightly interested in asteroids to join Amy and Laurie, because you'll learn even just by listening. So yeah. And the next person I'd like to introduce is Alan Clay. And Alan had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning because he lives in Australia. So I don't know if Alan's here. Alan, are you here?
Yes, I'm here now. Do I
Oh,
come up at the
bless
top of
you,
the
bless you. And Alan did a whole different approach to how to run a search, and it's fascinating to see it. They're kind of extremes, but just to see how they're both so effective and meeting the goal that the picture that I had for what searches would be. So, yes, Ellen, I'm turning it over to you.
Beautiful, thank you. Yes, I'm Alan Clay. I run something called the Dwarf Planet University. And so we study the dwarf planets, the new dwarf planets. We tend to lump the asteroids and the dwarf planets together as being asteroids. I tend to think of them all as being the same. They're very different. The asteroids are small pieces of rock that orbit between Mars and Jupiter. and the dwarf planets are planets, and most of them are outer planets beyond Pluto. We tend to get confused because Ceres was renamed as a dwarf planet and she was an asteroid. So we misunderstood Ceres for 200 or 300 years as an asteroid. Actually, she's a planet. So these are planets that we study. And so just like the planets, the normal planets, they have a planetary effect on our lives. What is that? Well, they're outer planets. Inside Saturn, aspects of personality. Outside Saturn, aspects of consciousness. Uranus, intuitive consciousness. Neptune, spiritual consciousness. And Pluto, psychological consciousness. And we've tended to think of these outer bodies as unconscious influences, generational influences. And of course they are. And they are that way if we're unconscious of their influence. We can make them conscious. We know with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, that we've made them conscious over these last few hundred years. They're now part of our lives, part of our understanding of how the world works. The psychological consciousness, we didn't have that 200 years ago. There was no understanding of that in human development. And so as these new planets are discovered, they represent new aspects of consciousness that are coming available to us. And we discover them at the point where we're ready for, well, many astrologers believe that. I believe that. When we're ready for that new consciousness. Now, we've just discovered a whole lot of new outer planets in these last 20 years. And so that's a huge step forward for mankind that we're going to go through as we embrace these new energies in our lives. We have to think they're valuable. We have to, and so this is the point we're at where we're discovering the value of them, just like we've been doing with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And we know with Pluto that when we're unconscious, there's a lot more force coming into our lives from Pluto than when we're conscious. So as we grow spiritually, these new planets are more available to us. I put out, and easier to work with, better. They become talents and abilities. And so I put out a book on Sedna, which was launched at the last UAC, which sort of set up, and Sedna is the new outer limit of our solar system, has been up until 2015, in fact. And this year, we did a research project through NCGR on the new outer limit, the Lea Kuanua, which has an orbit 3 to 5 times as long as Sedna. Sedna is 11,406 years. They're still working out the Lea Kuanua, the actual length of the orbit. It's just jumped from sort of 23,000 to 55,000 years. It's coming to its closest point. This is the one we did this year, the Lea Kuanua. And so we've got a way of researching these new ones. I mean, how do we find the meaning of them is what everyone sort of says. And so, well, we look at a range of factors. We look at the physicality of the object. Saturn has 87 moons and 150 moon-like objects. It's got rings. That's very Saturnian, talks about the structuring and the limiting principles of Saturn. Uranus spins with east-west poles. That's very Uranian. And so we can tell a lot from the physicality. We can tell a lot from the myth behind the name. We look at the Sabian symbol for the discovery degree. It's like a birth moment. It gives us a sort of an idea of how this of how this new energy is going to be manifesting astrologically. We look at past cycles. We look at discovery events. Uranus, electricity, Pluto, nuclear power, Sedna, neural networks, AI. Sedna's just gone into Gemini a couple of years ago. Boom, AI. So we can see what, from these things, discovery chart, we likely have. We don't always have a time. And so from all of these things, we get an idea of the chart, of what the planet is astrologically is talking about, and then we look at it in charts, just as we've been. The other research groups are mainly looking at charts. We have to do a search out and find meaning to start with, and we have to leap into the unknown with that. There's no right and wrong in the Kuiper Belt. Right and wrong is a Saturnian construct, works really well inside Saturn, but we have to leap into the unknown. And when we do that as a group, particularly what we found this year with the NCGR group was it's a wonderful process because each person is, I like to tell an elephant story, which I won't do now because it takes too long. But we're each experiencing a different part of this new planet when we're researching it. And we have to put that together into a sort of see the similarities. What does it all make together? And that's what the group is so good for. So I encourage you next year. I'm doing a group on Mani. Mani is one of the largest of the newly named dwarf planets. So we just had 4 or 5 names officially, and we wait for the official naming so we get the myth. And so Mani is the largest of the newly named ones, and the myth is a Norse myth. Mani is the man in the moon. So it's a male representation of the moon energy, and the wolves of darkness chase Mani's chariot across the sky to each night. So there's a light bringing in. So that's the starting point. For physicality, Mani has the highest mountains and the deepest gorges of any of the planets. They've been able to see it occulting in relief against a light source in the background. And so that talks about sort of well, we'll have to see what that talks about. But Sue Kent talks about Mani as being a deep thinker, and I think and Sue's here today, that talks about and she was a member of the NCGR group on Leleakua today, this year.
Alan, I hate to cut you off, but because it's also fascinating. But I just want to wrap up that with work again. I would drop into Alan's too, and his searches are run very structured. We have agendas, people have assignments, and yet some of us could just drop in and learn from what's going on. But what Alan shared with me was that it was really nice to have a team to work with, because what I'm hearing from so many researchers is that it's hard to do research by yourself, not only just because you have to do everything, but also just gathering data. And this is one of the things about SIRGs, that because there's so many people, hopefully, who are involved on these different groups, that they have all these different people gathering data. And so also with being part of NCGR, if we need more, we could put out a survey. So I just feels like with these surges, we can kind of surge forward with research, and we could do it in whatever style you wish. But I just want to honor Alan for getting up early to kind of share his wisdom with us, and to serve as an example of a very organized, structured way to do these search groups as well. So I think we're really needing to move forward. So I'm going to turn this over to back to Taylor.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Alan. Thank you. I'm Amy and Lori. I've dropped into the Asteroid Surge a number of times. It is so much fun. So I highly recommend anybody attend it, and all of the surges. So speaking of this segue into the surges, so we are so excited to have the surge leaders themselves of our current season of surges speak to you briefly about what they're researching. So I will be announcing the names, and then if each surge leader could speak for just 30 seconds to a minute, keep it pretty brief. I know we're already at least Eastern 2:37. a bit over time, so we do want to keep this condensed. But we're so excited for you all to learn about the topics of the SIRGs that we have going on and all of the fascinating research that is taking place. So to start, we have Kat Boyer and Ariel Gutman as advisor for Venus and the Venus Star Point. Kat and Ariel, can you share briefly what
Sure. Hi, Taylor. Thank you so much. What a great conversation we're having today. And I will share with everyone that I've been a member of NCGR for about 12 years. I've belonged to 4 different chapters because I move a lot. But along with Ariel, I'll be leading the research on Venus, the planet, and the many dimensions of Venus. And we haven't quite defined exactly the kind of research that we're going to do. We want it to be very collaborative, and we invite anybody who's interested in learning more about Venus or interested in doing specific research to join our calls. In my very first consultation with Anne Ortley, was told that Venus was my highest planet. She's in the 11th house. She's at an anaretic degree of a cardinal sign. So ever since then, I've been fascinated by everything Venus. So I'm very interested in leading this group and working with all of you all. And I look forward to collaborating with everyone. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kat. Thank you so much, Ariel. All right. Next, we have Maurice Fernandez, who will be leading research on the 12th house. Let's see, is Maurice? There you go. Hi.
Hey everyone, thank you for inviting me, and I'm very excited about this. As when I was working at OPA, we had a whole event about promoting research, and even had scholarships to encourage further research. And just a quick note, listening to Didem about Venus Morning Star, whether it represent one thing or another, there are so many myths in astrology that keeps passing from generation to generation. And there's, we take our word for it. We never test those. And so I'm delighted to advance research in astrology. I've worked a lot with Robert Curry and the Correlation Journal, and I'm happy to collaborate now with the NCGR. And yes, the 12th house, I did a lot of personal research on it, and I am looking forward to work with a group to work on things like pregnancy process and the 12th house, vocation and the 12th house, many aspects of the 12th house that are not in our cookbooks and yet are extremely relevant. So I've identified a few themes that really take the 12th house to a whole other level. Many of that is in my book on the same name, but it's expanding, it keeps expanding. And once we understand that 12th house better, we can understand other houses and more aspects of astrology. So looking forward to this. We're starting maybe in December if we have December 9, if we have a solid group. It's going to be on Tuesdays. Thank you.
Awesome. Fantastic. Thank you, Maurice. All right. Next, we have Andrea Gertz, who will be leading a surge on astrological remediation.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm Andrea Garrett. One thing I didn't hear people talk about is longitudinal research of a chart against itself. And so what we will be doing in the astrological remediation group is we will be looking at our own chart as a control against when we then apply astrological remedies to a problem we're having, in our life per the chart, and then studying, what changes in our own life. So we are the control against ourselves. And we'll be looking at, qualitative research of like storytelling of how has your life changed, but we'll be also looking at perhaps the photonic layer through things like pendulums to see have the chakras changed through these remedies. Or we look at things called dermatomes, which are electromagnetic swaths of skin, and we'll see, can we study the dermatomes changing through these remedies? So I came from a lineage, my dad's an infrared astrophysicist, so I grew up in a house of research. I'm more in the technical philosophy side of astrology, doing a lot of reparations for people who have been traumatized by their chart. I do a lot of philosophical repairing of their mind after, hearing about bad things in their chart. But I think this is going to be really interesting to take it to the research level to see, can we identify the problem we're having? Can we isolate the planet that needs remediation? And then can we repair it? And then can we measure that? So thank you so much for having me. We're meeting on the last Saturday of the month from 2 to 4, starting in November. Reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat. Thank you, Linda and Taylor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. And as you guys will learn as the SIRGs leader speaks, some have confirmed times and dates and meeting times. Some are just rolling out. All of this information will be kept current on the NCGR SIRG website. So make sure you're checking the link in the chat to get information that is up to date. Awesome. All right. And next we have Judith Hill leading a medical SIRG. All right. There's Judith. Oh, hold on. We had your video. Okay, great. And now, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, there we are.
There we go. Awesome. Okay.
And yes, hi, Taylor. I am going to be leading a medical SIRG group, whatever you call them. And it will start on January 12th at 4:30 p.m. Pacific, but that's very adjustable depending on who we find to do the Zoom program for me, because I'm not going to be running the Zoom. I'll need someone to do that. And Linda's helping me out with that. And we have several possible projects, but I have a strong inkling that astrology and the direct influence on the physical body can be very directly shown in some very easy methods. They've just never been tried. And again, one of them can be done with people willing to use a blood pressure cuff. And I'm not going to give away the secrets of the design yet. But I'm also interested in comparative studies of diseases that are very, very different astrologically and can never be mistaken for each other. Now, I'm a medical astrologer. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of disease cases. So I've selected diseases that have very, very different signatures, like hemorrhagic stroke and the day of death from hemorrhagic stroke, I believe can be sorted very easily from cases of people who died from uterine cancer, but who never had high blood pressure or strokes. I believe once people are given the signatures to look for, and they have some experience with physical and medical astrology, they would be able to sort these fairly easily. I have some very easy tests I've designed, and I've had some complex tests to design, and some tests that even lay people can use. So this would depend a lot on who signs up for the group. If they are, all experienced medical astrologers and no physiognomy and so forth, or if they're lay people interested in doing some physical experiments with a blood pressure cuff or a electromagnetic monitor or something. So I believe we can have some very, very excellent results. And we hope so anyway, and maybe not. We will find. One thing you learn in research is never to get your hopes real high and be very, very patient. Research is no place for Aries. Ha ha ha. I'm not an Aries, but you have to learn to be very, very patient and just quiet down, girl. It's another year. You got to replicate. It's probably just you, because sometimes the universe will give you just what you want to see, and it won't give somebody else that. So that's why we need several people doing things, and why I'm going to shoot for very physical results that cannot be questioned on psychological or symbolic grounds, or that are subjective. And we're going to have to figure out how to do that, how to design skeptic-proof exams. I'm pretty good at that. So we'll hopefully have a lot of fun. And I'm not going to get all wading into a lot of statistics. We have so many people that are much better at that than me. I'm not a statistician. I always have to hire people. And a lot of you love statistical tests. Go to those guys. So, all right. I hope that that satisfies you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Judith. I know it's funny that Linda, with her zero Aries sun, is the one who's come up with the SIRGs, and yet we know research takes forever and ever.
I was going to say, both myself and my school director guessed she was an Aries because she has that flash in her eye. He said, "There's an
Yeah.
Aries." And we both bet she was Aries. We found out she was.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. So next we have Kelly Hunter, who is leading a search on the Centaur object Chariklo.
Yes, I am. I love Chariklo. Yeah, however you pronounce her name, I like to go with variables, Chariklo, Chariklo, and I love Chariklo. I'm born in 1949, the year when there was a Chiron Chariklo conjunction. And that's one reason I have them both conjunct my sun. And I just the discovery chart of Chariklo is so fascinating with 6 things in Aquarius, including an exact Jupiter-Uranus conjunction at 5 Aquarius, which, Pluto's coming along and really going to work with Chariklo's chart over the next 15 to 20 years. So that's one good reason. But she's also got a 6-pointed star in the chart with grand trine, fire grand trine. And she's just a beautiful evocation of the cosmic feminine, which is one of my special areas of interest. And there's a kind of level of communion, I think, here. I'm very into qualitative research. I am not a big data person, so I would welcome anybody who wants to bring some of that to this surge that I'm facilitating, but also stories and poems and experiences. So I I think that the arising of the divine feminine these days is really bringing Chariklo to our attention more, and a lot of people have become interested in her as the divine feminine aspect of Chiron, which is the divine masculine, and they both bring their different qualities of healing to any situation. So I'm inviting anybody who's a Chariklo lover to join in, and we will explore in many ways, I hope. And I will also be bringing in other people as guest contributors to our group now and again. So I'm not exactly sure. I think in January would be my first possible starting point, depend on what I've got going on. And so, and I was going to look for a good time with her. Perhaps, well, her birthday is February 15th. So I don't think I want to wait that long to start, but we'll have a celebratory moment in February. And my idea is to meet together once a month. If we get it together, maybe we can meet once every 2 weeks, but I'm thinking once a month and ask people who, are in the group also to share some of what they've been learning in various ways. So very, very grateful to be invited to do this specific surge. Thank you very much. And I hope a lot of you will be, interested to dive into this really special archetypal energy that there's not much in the mythological research about her. So anything you want to bring in, I have my own story to share. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much, Kelly. All right, thank you so much for sharing all of that. That is fantastic. And I love the counterpoint of Chariklo and Chiron. All right. So the next we have on the list, we have Franco Minatel and Alfie Lavoie leading left-handers in astrology. Franco, can you take this one?
Sure. Okay. Who's left-handed? Raise your hand. I can't see you. Put them down. And our group here, we're going to be looking at using Alfie's software and using the statistical analysis. I'll give you a few lessons on that. We'll be teaching the group. Alfie has been kind enough to supply his program for our group that you can learn how to use it. And then we'll be looking at left-handers to see, and maybe we can't find this, but we're going to see who is a left-hander based on their birth chart. So we'll be looking at aspects, signs, houses, midpoints, all that kind of stuff. One of the interesting thing is, and I was mentioning it earlier before the meeting, is running people like myself, who's a late boomer, almost Gen Xer. I'm Italian descent. My two older sisters are immigrants, or my parents. And in Italian, right hand is destra, left hand is sinistra. And I know for a fact, if I picked up anything with my left hand, my mom slapped it and moved pen, whatever toy, into my right hand. So that'll be interesting to check how many of the right-handers could have potentially been left-handers. So that's one of the kind of interesting things we will do in this study group and see if we could come up with a solution. We're looking at getting started in early November. And we'll probably start doing it run meetings every 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Franco. That sounds great. All right. So next we have, John Marcusella, who is not able to attend right now to speak about his second Saturn return work session. But Linda, can you read the statement that he had prepared?
I'm just going to quickly say that this is going to be more like a focus group. So it's going to be a one-time Saturday. And it's going to be he's looking for people between the ages of 60 to 65. So you could read more about it on the website. But this is the beauty of these SIRGs. They can take many forms, and this is the one that John's chosen to do. So yeah, it's on the second Saturn returns.
Thanks so much, Linda. All right, next we have Crystalline Sophia and Vivi Henriette, who are going to be working with annual perfections.
Thanks, Taylor. So Vivi couldn't be here today, so I'm going to cover it for us, but we're both really excited to talk about annual perfections. Not only is annual perfections a really fascinating technique, but it's very accessible. So we're going to be diving into some Hellenistic astrology and really getting into metaphorical timing techniques, ways that your chart releases in its own time as you live throughout your life. And you can see when a house is going to be highlighted, or perhaps that sign is going to take over more. And we're going to be studying the difference between the Time Lord rulership of the ruling planet and the influence of signs or of planets in the signs that are activated for that year. So there's a lot that we get to do. There's a lot of ways to take this into your own areas and charts that you particularly love to study, to be able to really learn more about biographies, about celebrities or people who have lived full lives, so you can study from the beginning to the end where their perfections have released and what happened in those times. It's going to be fascinating. We'll be meeting monthly starting in November.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Crystalline. That sounds fantastic. I'm going through some fascinating perfections right now. Almost done with my 12th house perfection year. Everybody pray for me. Anyway, but next, all right, so we have Wendy Stacy, who will be leading a SIRG on does the time of birth reflect the nature of birth?
Thanks, Taylor. The group that I'm going to be working with is looking at the nature of birth, the experience of birth. Looking at astrologers have always associated ascendant, the ruler of the ascendant, aspects to the ascendant, things like that, as being the quality of time for birth. So what we're going to be doing is collecting some data, more qualitative data, and we'll be using questionnaires, interviews, focus groups, the choices of those who want to contribute, and collecting that data and then putting it together with a whole bunch of other demographics, who these people are, what age they are. We're looking at mothers, of course. So it's using qualitative methodology, and then we're going to see what the outcomes of that are. So we'll be first meeting at the beginning of November, and we'll be meeting monthly for 6 months, so we can collect data, come back, and start building on that. So that's me, really. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That is fantastico and so interesting, as all of these are. Like, that's the problem. I want to attend every single one, but I will have to choose. Anyway, all right. So next we have Tom Steddall and Carol Martin, who will be leading a SIRG on mundane astrology.
Hello, thank you. I'm Carol, and so I'm going to be leading this SIRG on mundane astrology with Tom Steddall. Tom and I, well, we're currently the guest editors of Correlation, which is, as far as we know, the only peer-reviewed astrological research journal in the world. And really one of the big things that we've learned in doing this editorship is how much in need we are of more astrological researchers. So we're really so excited to be a part of this. And we're going to focus our SIRG on mundane astrology, which very general, of course. Mundane stems from the Latin word mundus, right? Meaning the world. So this is the branch of astrology that's going to look at politics, economic cycles, collective historical events. And so in practice, that really means studying planetary cycles, eclipses, especially the movements of the outer planets, right? And their correlation with political and societal events. So, Tom and I were both really influenced by Cosmos and Psyche, Rick Tarnas's book, and it, which we think is like great descriptive work of the archetypes and everything, but it really left us with a desire to take that kind of work a lot further through more specific, systematic research. Questions like how can we use more established historical sociological methods? I'm a historical sociologist by training. What space is there for quantitative research? How might we use AI or LLMs to conduct more rigorous historical studies? So really, we want this group to be a place to share research questions, methodological approaches, data, to really support one another in designing and conducting these kinds of more rigorous studies, whether qualitative, quantitative, mixed methods, and really ideally to start building a stronger, more connected body of research that we can publish, right? Publish in our journal or other journals. So, and we invite anybody who's interested in the topic. You don't have to be a super, super advanced researcher or astrologer for that matter. So really, we're open to anyone who's really interested in the topic, and hopefully we can just brainstorm together and work on different projects. We've scheduled our first meeting for October 30th at 4 p.m. London time, which is going to be noon on the East Coast. So we'll see who comes and decide how to go from there. So thanks, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Fantastic. All right. And the last SIRG we have is Jeremy Walker and Taina Katola, who will be researching autism in astrology. Very, very timely topic right now. So if...
Taina, can you unmute?
Yes, I'm unmuted.
Great. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we actually are starting next week. We're starting on the next Sunday, and we'll be 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We are open to autistic astrologers who we'd like to secondarily be creating a bit of a support group for, as well as any astrologers that are interested in studying autism or who have studied autism, because I watched what Dee Dee was saying. Sorry, I was busy typing something and I got distracted for a second before I started. So I've got myself gotta get myself properly grounded. I'm the founder of Third Stage Astrology System, which is an evolutionary and karmic astrology. And Jeremy is an astrologer and a coach. We want to start out by defining as a group, depending on who shows up, what it is our topics of research are going to be and how we're going to go about researching them. Obviously, one of the things we can look at is astrological signatures and whether it's dwarf planets or specifics, traditional planet signatures, or other aspects in the chart. The other thing is that, sorry, normally I thought I would be better prepared. I got distracted, like I said. At any rate, so we want to study how astrology influences autism, but we also would like to study how autism influences astrology. So another topic of study would be autistic astrologers, even historical or famous people who do show indications of autism, because it's a trait, or so I was going to say, because there are certain characteristics that autistic people have that allow them to penetrate beneath the surface of things. There's a different perspective that people come to things through. Let's see, we also, yeah. So, and also how astrology really helps autistic people to be able to communicate with non-autistic people, as well as to just understand the world. It's beneficial to autism. Another thing we would like to produce, if possible, is something that can be shared with the general public in terms of introducing astrology to autistic people, but also helping astrologers understand autism more. So, yeah. Jeremy, do you have anything else to add?
I'm just really excited, I think, by the goal that we could have autistic astrologers join us. I found out I was autistic a few years ago myself, and there's more and more of us that are, hey, wait a minute, it's just astrology can be a great special interest for many of us. So, yeah, the idea would be let's explore autism from an astrological perspective and explore astrology from an autistic perspective with the goal of advancing our understanding of both. And if people are interested, I'll just put in the chat the Patreon page that we have, and we'll be sharing more details about the first meeting, which is next Sunday.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tina and Jeremy. I did have to laugh when I first saw the title of Special Interest Research Group. I said, oh, so you're calling all of the ADHDers and Naughties out of the woodwork? All right, let's go. Let's do it. Awesome. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here, for attending this fantastic panel, for sending your energy in, for also thank you to our panelists. Linda will do a better thank you. I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude right now. But in particular, with our SIRGs leaders, as you guys can see, we've got a whole course catalog. There's so much information. There's so many wonderful things to study. This is round 1 of the SIRGs. We literally had to keep it corralled because there's just so much interest. We wanted to make it remotely manageable. But we are thrilled about every single one of these topics and all the ways that we're driving the field of astrology forward. Now, one of the best things, as we've even seen today, good things happen when astrologers get together. So we invite you to join NCGR and enjoy. There's so many wonderful membership benefits. You can join local chapters, one of the only organizations that has local chapters to get that local connection. There are affiliate discounts, including things like conferences like UAC. There are webinars hosted by both national and by local chapters as well. So there's a ton of information. There's so many resources that we're getting. And you also get the opportunity to submit work to publications like the Geocosmic Journal, like the SIRG. And again, you get to hang out with really, really cool people like everybody in this webinar. So that to me is the best benefit. The friends that I've made here, shout out to Emily, shout out to Deb, shout out to Linda. I felt immediately like I just joined the Powerpuff Girls, and I feel awesome about it. I love it. So join NCGR. That gives you the opportunity to join the SIRGs. We hope you become one of the family. And so I'll kick it off to Linda for the final closeout.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for doing such a great job moderating this. It was hard to keep everything under control because there is so fascinating to hear everybody. Yes, I just want to really, really honor and thank our panelists, our esteemed panelists. and all the leaders who have stepped up to further the credibility and the interest and the education of astrology. I think we all love astrology so much, and just this feels like it's a collaboration of everybody around the world. I just got an email from Alejandra, who's the director for ESAR, and she's looking to collaborate in some way with us. And Taylor got something from a couple in France who'd like to start SIRG group. And so this feels like this is a container for all of us as astrologers to come together to really further this profession that we love and that we know can help the world in so many ways. So the other thing I just wanted to announce that we do have coming up, Frank Clifford is going to be doing a presentation on how to write for how to write professional articles, and that's open to everybody, and that's going to be on November 16th, and that's through the Sacramento chapter. So if you go to ncgrsacramento.org, you can sign up for that. And also, this is very exciting that we're going to be running a second track, or I guess it would really be a third track of webinars. Crystal Lynn and Vivi are going to be leading one on Hellenistic astrology. So that'll be our focus. It's going to be run probably alternating from our regular webinar series. And the third one, as many of you know, is we have international webinars as well that is also open to everybody. And I'm just going to close with a shout out to Deborah Perito, who's doing our podcast. We have an NCGR podcast now, and she does a wonderful job. And so please check that out. So I'm sorry this ran long, but you can see that there's just so much excitement and so much going on at NCGR. We're just really, really happy to have you all involved. So thank you for coming. So signing off for now. Bye-bye.